That's great. With all these kind of different brands we're talking about, there is an interesting dynamic because we're talking about now foreign and domestic manufacturers, but we also have within domestically traditional auto OEMs and then also kind of these startups, the Teslas, the Lucids, the Rivians. And one of the areas where the OEMs have kind of been different than the startups, I don't even know if you can really call most of them startups anymore because of their size, but it's around charging infrastructure and really making that kind of a seamless experience with that transition to an electric vehicle, making just easy and something you don't have to worry about. And that kind of goes back to that change anxiety thing. What are some of the things that you're working on at ZETA that you are kind of working towards to really help make that transition around charging infrastructure easier for drivers?
Well, so it's actually in some ways a antiquated view in that right now, if you actually look at the plug, there's really only two plugs in the country, and it's almost like your cell phone, right? You've got your mini USB and your lightning stick, and that's kind of how charging has developed on the light duty side. There's actually more harmonization on the medium and heavy duty side. It's, we're going to be moving towards a single plug, but even on the light duty side, it's two. Most cars come with an adapter. And I think, the market is going to make it even more accessible for folks as we build out the charging infrastructure. So you've got companies like EVgo and EV Connect and EV Box and ChargePoint. And, it's going to feel a little bit like, I don't know if you've ever, been in the micro mobility or scooter space, but, you're looking at 4 or 5 different apps looking for the right place to get a bike or a scooter. And it's going to feel like that initially on the charging infrastructure side. But, increasingly, I think there's going to be just ubiquitous charging, and people, won't think twice about it. Kind of like, we've become accustomed to think about gas stations. Charging is going to be the same way. And it's, and I'm somebody that does it a lot. I tend to charge at home, but, I can also go to the grocery store and charge. And I think increasingly, as it becomes normal to, park in a retail setting and go into the store, or you're going to be at a movie, or you're going to be at school, or you're going to be at the office, charging is just going to be an opportunity that you can face anywhere. So I actually think in some ways right now it's about sequencing. You want to be able to outpace the car. And so you want to make sure that there's enough charging to support the current vehicle fleet. But you also don't want to outpace it. You don't want to have so much that you have capital that sits idle and it's unused. And so right now, we're in a healthy balance. And my expectation is with the right federal investments, we'll be able to keep pace with the vehicle fleet that's out there and adequately serve everybody's charging needs.
Well, I think that's actually kind of what I'm asking towards is what do you think that federal incentive needs to be and to make sure we stay at that healthy balance? Because I agree with you overall. I think depending on the manufacturer, you run into some issues, but it's come a long way because when I was driving an EV for the first time like 8 or 9 years ago, there weren't any. So it's night and day, and you're right. Majority of the time, people are just going to be charging at home, so it's not a huge thing. But being able to do kind of the great American road trip is a necessity for someone to really make that switch. And I'm just curious because with a lot of these hardware improvements for charging infrastructure, I've been a part of some of these conversations, and there's all sorts of regulatory and other issues you just run into. And I'm curious what kind of frameworks or how ZETA can help maybe streamline that process and give information to utilities or others to really make it much more of a seamless experience, or for people who are curious about putting them in their gas stations or wherever. What kind of agenda and what kind of regulatory improvements, let's say, is ZETA kind of looking to help push forward?
Well, on the incentive side, there's an existing 30C tax credit, which is a 30% credit for the cost of installing a charging unit. We want to see that expanded and reformed, but there's already a base there and a precedent for it. What that looks like is, I think is really a base for a site host, a community, a utility, a third-party charging company to, say, hey, we'd like to pursue electrification and charging for this use case. And it's pretty flexible. I think, again, we want it to be expanded. But I actually think most communities are trying to figure out right now for every sort of capital improvement or upgrade, whether it's building or transportation or other sorts of infrastructure, how are we going to make this meet our community's needs for the next 25 or 50 years? And electrification is just going to be part of that. So the demand is there. I think certainly the leadership at the local level is there. And then you've got the right partners in place between the charging companies, the utilities, and the site hosts. And so, I think the biggest complement that we can provide to that is a strong federal incentive. The other thing that you could talk about from a regulatory standpoint is building codes. So providing, model building codes. So, let's say if you're building a new home, for example, it's just a lot easier on the front end to make it level 2 equipped and certainly capable of installing the charging. And then for commercial and other uses, there's what they call make ready, which is basically all of the architecture that's needed before you get putting the charging unit in the ground. And so the more of that gets done automatically as we're pursuing big capital projects, and certainly the federal government can lead by example, the better. And you're just making that adoption and transition to electrification, simpler and easier.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to visit our website, connectingthegrid.com. There you can listen to our podcasts, contact us about sponsorship, or even be a guest on Grid Connections. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a positive rating on your favorite podcast or video streaming service. Or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out a lot too. Thank you again, and I look forward to us learning more together soon.